just installed new meters, so my compliments on the progress. That should continue to be a priority. The other thing I talked about was you were losing about 50 customers annually. And that was something that, should be at the forefront of when you're looking at both utilities, because it impacts not just utilities, but many other aspects of the city's revenue. And one of the reports that Stacy and Tim gave me had the sales of year to date. And one thing you should be aware of, you're about 10% off in the number of gallons sold. And again, probably a number of things are impacting that. One thing, attrition of customers. Probably two, it was a milder summer this year. We didn't have those real hot days. People watering yard. That impacts your revenue there. You're about 8% off on the forecasted revenues. Again, 10% loss of water. I was aware of a potential problem with the county wanting to go someplace else. That probably doesn't spell out the whole story, but that certainly has an impact on the collections. So that being said, the one thing when I spoke to you earlier that I did want to talk to you about, and I think you're already starting it, just a matter of putting all the pieces together. And when I heard some of the issues council had, is one of the things fixed. I heard that repeatedly when I was up here before, didn't I? So we talked a little bit about asset management planning, and asset management planning is a process. It's just like how you take care of your car. You change your oil, check your fluids, get it tuned up when it needs to get more miles out of it. Same way with your utilities. There's several best practices that the industry standards that your staff is incorporating, and it's just bringing it all together. And some of these processes puts out a really nice report to council for you to make decisions about your utility and about your spending and so forth. Stacy said the software that you had does have an asset management capability. And I think that's already paid for, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things I would recommend that council would continue to direct the staff is working towards putting together an asset management plan. And an asset management plan, I even went so far when we were talking this afternoon with Kim, is probably somebody from the utility committee should serve as a stakeholder in that planning process in several aspects, because it does need the voice of your citizens in there, because there's questions about level of service and things like that that I think you could speak to much easier than a professional. When we put the rates together last year, we put them together fairly close. A 10% margin. It doesn't surprise me that you have had to do a transfer at this point in time. Also, I think fixing the meters and changing those out like has been done, it takes about a quarter before you actually see results. So continue on that process, because the low meters are running slow, and that probably accounts for some of your decrease. They're just not registering. Cash register's not working fast enough to account for all that water that is showing up as non-revenue water. We talked a little bit about delinquency, and delinquency is stable compared to when I was up here before. And you're always going to have delinquency. That's something projects. They weren't quantified when I was up here before. I kind of off the cuff told Tim that I would recommend that whenever you're borrowing money for one of those capital projects for the sewer, whenever you authorize the city manager to sign the note for the loan, you can amortize that out and incorporate that in your sewer rates. Now that those are quantified, I think I would be bitching with that. You've got a little more room in the sewer to work, but you still don't have a lot. So I guess my recommendations for tonight is to embrace asset management. You can have professionals take care of that service. You can do a lot of that work in-house, and I think that by far is more meaningful when you do that as a team, your professional team, and some input from council, mayor, and so forth. And I would be, adjusting the sewer rates as capital projects as you're moving forward towards tomorrow. That's the safest course that I can recommend. The big thing really is water sales in thousands of gallons are going down. 2012, they were 310 million. In 2013, they were 298 million. 14, they're 267 million. If the trend continues from the first half of this year, you're going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 458 million. We actually based our rate forecast on 2012 information, which was what I was working with, and that's considerably less than what we have here. So with that, any questions? Yes, sir.
Well, when you based your rate on 2012, didn't you factor in that we were going to continue to decline?
Yes, I did. I was looking at about 2% decline per year. And the one factor I can't figure is who, is it going to be a large customer or a small customer? One of the things we talked about was small hospitals was off this year. It's still buying water, but it's less. And my factors were on a 5-year trend. Some years you could be 10%. Some years you might be a little bit ahead, but over the 5-year period you were about 2% decline. I factored that in. Other questions? Yes, sir.
You talked about the delinquent funds.
Mm-hmm.
What would a good, I don't know where ours are at right now, what is like 10%, 20%? Do you have that figure? I mean, I know no delinquent fund would be perfect, but
It varies on what the community's doing. If you're aggressively collecting, you should be. I've walked into situations where they were in excess of 25%. And there's a difference between delinquency and charge-offs, and I think Stacy's going to address that. But you should be looking, when you look at the economic condition of the area too, probably you should resemble what the banks are looking at in delinquency. And maybe a little bit higher, maybe 5% higher. I would say probably 10 to 15% up there is unreasonable.
what was that? I'm sorry.
10 to 15% probably is unreasonable. Your banks are going to be a little bit lower, but they have underwriting standards. You don't have any underwriting standards for water. Everybody gets water.
Correct.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Got a few statements here. Of course, I'm not too happy, never am. This didn't work. We just raised the water rates last year and the maintenance rates. Now, you want us to increase the minimum usage. I receive more complaints about the people paying for the water and not using it all. They want it lowered. You say we're losing 50 people. I just read some numbers. Next year, this city is going to be down to around 17,500 in year 2015. And I know these people, these old people, can't bear. I don't know what the answer is. But raising, I don't know. Stacy, I'd like to know a ballpark number. I know this is going to irritate some people. What is our total percentage that we use for our personnel? You know, fringe benefits, salaries, everything. What percentage of that comes out? It used to be about 89%, which is too high. So that's going to break some people. So I don't know what the answer is, but raising isn't the answer. I know one thing, we have Willie Still down there that's been vacant for 4 or 5 years, that uses a lot of water, or did. Now we have Fallsby, they're starting to develop, and so is Weirton. It looks like we're left holding the 8 ball. I don't know, I'm criticizing anything, but we need some large new water customers. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't want to criticize without any solutions. But we just can't keep on raising. Thank you.
You made that comment. I'm working with a very small community down in Macon County. And because they're so small, we were really trying to get a multifamily housing unit in there so we could increase water and sewer sales and stabilize the rates that way. Whenever you can attract more users and stabilize this trend, Steubenville's going to be better off. And someday you hope it's going to be bottomed out. But right now we're still seeing we're seeing attrition of we're seeing a loss of customers. And you're the council that has to bear the burden of dealing with that loss of customers. And the decisions you make, that's why I say the asset management planning, and that's some long-term planning. That isn't, I need a project now, or I need this knee-jerk reaction. If you do the asset management planning, we can provide some training. We provide training locally on asset management planning. If you have some interest in finding out more about what that's about, either tell me before I leave or have Tim get a hold of me. But it really makes sense, and this is nothing new. Back when I was working farm loans in the early 80s, we started this with farmers on, you got to replace things. Things wear out. The pipes, the pumps, the plant, all these things we're talking about are in a very costly environment. They're going to wear out, they're going to break, they're going to fail. What's your expectations on service? What do you expect when a line breaks? How long service to be out? How many customers are affected, are acceptable? Those kind of things documented in a plan. Now, a plan is nothing more than a roadmap, and how many of us have got lost when we've traveled? We've all done it, huh? But I think asset management planning will get you out of your current. And I agree with you to a certain extent on the rates. You get rates up above 4% of the median household income, you're going to have collection problems. That's what we see. You're not there yet. The other thing I noticed, I was trying to see, and we talked about this, when we raised rates, people cut back on their use of water. Now, the assumption we make from all the other communities that we work in, and what we've seen in the past is, okay, we are creatures of habit. When the rates go up, and they first go up, we're very watchful of how much water we use. Then as time goes on, we're habitually, if I take a 20-minute shower, we're going to stand we'll get back to 20 minutes. That's the assumption, that's the business assumption you gotta make. There's an art to making rates, there's a science to making rates, and I haven't really come out and said tonight that you need to be raising rates. I did say that when you borrow money, there's a direct impact on your loan payments to your cash flow, and you've got a lot of projects that are now quantified on your sewer side that you're gonna have to watch. On your water side, putting in the new meters, that in itself raises rates for all practical purposes, but the new meters, you use it, you pay for it. That's the concept behind that. Right now, those meters aren't running as fast as those old meters. So continue the meter upgrade program that you're working on, I compliment you. Fixing the leaks, whenever you can do that and start accounting for water, isolating the system as much as you can and have valve exercising your valves, that's all part of asset management. Many systems with some age on it, they don't exercise their valves on a routine basis. And what happens if you have a break and you go out there and shut it off, Tim? What happens? Sometimes the valve doesn't work. So you can't shut the motor off and you gotta fix the brake hot, so you've lost that much more water. This is all part of asset management. There's some really good practices that, there's no free lunch, but there's some really good practices that you can incorporate. And I think in working with this council and city administration, I think you're to the point, and I've heard you ask the very good questions of your staff. You want to be working on that plan and come up with some long-term direction for your city's utilities. You can do it.
I appreciate those comments. I want to address a couple of things in that. I think in about 3 weeks, we're going to be hearing from the auditors and their reviews. So I think that's coming to the point where we could start addressing some issues at that point. We have asked and stated that we're talking right now, I appreciate your comments, about potential increasing minimum bill from 2,000 to 3,000, which in effect is a rate increase on our current residents. We talked to you about trying to bring in new sources of revenue, maybe looking downtown, potential staging areas for the oil and gas. Where do we stand on that right now? I think that's an important thing. We've gone to our citizens, they've ponied up, they've helped out. Now they're looking for us to try to do something different. That is bringing in revenue. So where do we stand on that?
Yeah, thank you, Greg. That is and has been a topic at our economic development committee meetings. We have completed our customer base list. As you recall, Greg, we were working on that, and are needless to say, going to be approaching them for any interest that they have in bulk water rates. We've had some discussions, most recently with the firm, about that. And so we have, I think, all the tools in place. We have sample agreements. We have customer base identified of oil and gas companies to market to. So I really think that is, we have the process in place, it's the strategy in place to address them, but that needs to be done. And I think also, we've had comments in this room about how we would do that, the actual
That's
process.
what I'm looking at, the process. Do we have a
And
place?
we had a process with Chesapeake, and I've heard mixed results about that episode. I think that we would be able to manage that process better. But it would still be trucks in that area. Going to other areas of the community, that's probably a little farther off in terms of implementing the infrastructure for doing that. But I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, I know we looked at a potential site here downtown.
Yeah.
Has that been reviewed yet with the ability to extend the line across?
I have nothing confirmed on that site.
Yes, okay.
I think to answer your question further, the problem is they're not drilling in Jefferson County right now.
Right.
So that's why we're not selling water. We're not going to sell water until they start to drill in Jefferson County. They're in Belmont, Harrison, Carroll. So they're not going to drill a well in Belmont and drive 45 minutes to get water here. So that's the problem. Once they come here to Jefferson, then we'll start selling water.
We need to be prepared with the site that we can stage.
We do. I wouldn't say, it certainly isn't a quick fix. I agree, and I agree with Jan's statements, and it's something that we need to be as far along in terms of our competitiveness as we can be. But I would say that what some of the things that Mr. Roush has talked about, and Stacy's been talking about, are much more systemic and much more, we're talking about population demographics and population ebb and flow, and so there's some real systemic issues that we need to solve with our system. We certainly can assist our bottom line with users of water. That's just about it, and I think we'll be well positioned to do that. But I think we have it's a broader topic, in my opinion, in terms of solving our imbalances, if you will, in our rates and in our customer base and some other areas.
Yeah, just a couple things. First off, with I hear these figures. We're losing 50 customers a year, 10% loss of water, and 10 to 15% delinquency is normal, and I'm not sure if we're up to that percentage or not, but I feel that as a city, we have to try to get more customers here. We have to try everything that we can do first to remedy this solution, this problem, before we go to the consumer, again, the people of the city. We raise it up. If we go to the $3,000 minimum, it in fact just raises the rates for everybody. And there's some people, some of the elderly people don't pay, they don't use 2,000 gallons. They're going to have to pay more than that. And I just, what I think we need to do as a city is we need to be diligent, work very hard to get new customers, to create an atmosphere in the city that is conducive to big business coming here, and our image of the city would help out a lot. I think that that's a big thing why we don't have some of the customers is our image as a city, as the cleanliness of the town is deplorable, and everybody in this room can agree on that. I hope that we need to do that. Maybe some customers would come forward. The Port Authority is one of our greatest assets to bringing customers to them, and we chose to donate $5,000 to them instead of $50,000, which I think would have been a lot better off with the Port Authority, than we were with CIC and Project Alliance and everything like that. So I think as a city, we have to make a more concerted effort to do these things, because myself personally, I will not vote to raise the water bills, the sewer, and I definitely won't go for the 3,000 gallons until we do that. And that's just my opinion. All the figures can come up in the world here. We have an audit due. We have an audit coming due here pretty soon. I think we need to listen to what they're going to say first to see what the problems are, because there was a lot of delinquent bills that were there, and I'm not an auditor. I want to hear what they have to say, but I think that we have to do more as a city to entice people to come here before we go to these people and ask them for more money. And that's my opinion. My statement.
on the meter replacement program. Where we're anywhere between 50 and 75% of the commercials, and we haven't started residential, which is supposed to be started next year, and I think projected to be done by April. Wouldn't it be wise not to raise any rates until that comes in? Because a study has been done that shows the Steubenville household uses 50% less than the national average. And Steubenville also charges 50% more than comparable cities. So aren't we kind of like putting the horse in front of the cart in front of the horse by raising rates before we even get an impact of these meters?
If you have the ability to ride this out for a little bit, and you replace the meters, that's a reasonable strategy. I'm buying into the comment. The one concern that I have is you've already pulled $500,000 out of your reserves. You've only got so much reserve, so, what I'm saying here to the council is it's a balancing act. You should be collecting more revenues when you put in those new meters. Some of those old meters might be reading right on the money. Probably most of them are not. They're running slow. They don't speed up. They run slower as they get older and they turn. If you have the ability to weather this out for a few months, the only problem is, and back when I was working with the mayor most closely last winter, is you get into January, December, and if you need a rate increase, you're impacting next year's revenues. So that's a caution I'm giving you. You make the decisions, I don't. But that's a reasonable strategy. And if you have the reserves that you're going to gamble, that is a strategy you can consider. Raising rates is always an end. But the other thing that I noticed from working with other communities is you do have this dip in consumption after you raise rates. When did the rate impact, or when did the rate take effect in March?
Yeah, I think February, March. We passed it in January, and then February, March, John.
Folks are a little bit, typically, after we see a substantial rate increase, you see a downward trend in usage. The other thing that I recommended when I did the rate increase is you should try to keep up with inflation. Based on your numbers, I think 1.7% is your inflation numbers. We usually recommend 3 because you can't always hold. Now that doesn't replace an annual rate review, but we always say you need to keep up with inflation because you can't control your electric prices, insurance, and all the other inputs that you have into your utility operation. That's something in the future. If you're working on asset management plan, it's a lot easier pill to swallow. 25 cents an annual increase as opposed to a $5, $10 increase if you delay that. Water prices, sewer prices, they're not going down.
John, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
RCAP, did they work with mostly rural communities?
We work with a lot of rural villages. We're working with a lot of cities these days. We work with the big special purpose districts and the not-for-profits down south.
I guess my real question, do you work with other communities that are like ours where we lost industry and that kind of stuff like that?
Unfortunately, that's been my life since I've been down in this part of the world. I'm from Washington County, and we're seeing population trends. My children, as a matter of fact, they're all in Texas. Part of the world I grew up in, we see these trends all over. It's sad, but it's marketing. It's being lucky to get that user, big employer to come in town. I listened to an economist in Boston, and I'm talking too long, so I gotta go to another meeting. But I will tell this story real quick. I listened to an economist in Boston, and he was talking about the adjustments to the economy, and he predicted the housing bubble busting almost to a T. He described how that would look, and all the other impacts, and what the federal government would do to sort of counterbalance that. And he said these adjustments will continue, and he says one thing in this country, and I took it to heart, we probably won't be recruiting, and recruiting's not the right word, is it, Dom? What do you call it when you're trying to solicit a business to come into town? I'll call it recruiting, is that okay? We're all on the same page.
Bait,
Pardon?
bait.
Vague, okay, vague. He says you're not gonna see the big smokestacks that we saw back in our parents' and grandparents' times, but you are gonna see small, diverse manufacturing, assembling, and things like that. So, unfortunately, some of those aren't big water users, but some of them are. You know, if you could recruit somebody that processes chickens or something like that, that would solve your utilities problem. But I don't know that Tyson's gonna move to Steubenville right away. It's too far to get the grain over here. But, you know, keep working on that. I think all rocks need to be turned. As part of our service after a sale, you know, I plan on continuing having talks with Tim and Stacy and probably Mike and Chuck. And certainly, if you want to talk more about asset management, I would not, RCAP will not take on an asset management project of this size this year. We're full up. But if you want to talk about how to structure a proposal or something like that, if you want to try to get some of the things, you may need some help from a person with engineering qualifications. We can tell you how to do that and some things to look out for. But I think asset management, that long-term planning process, I would love to, Mr. Johnson, we talked on the phone, I'd love to see you sit on the stakeholders committee there. I think some of the questions that you would ask and some of the insight would be great. But please consider those. Any other questions, council?
Well, I think it was last year when you were talking to us, you had already given us pretty much this news. I think, if I'm correct, you had said something about over a period of time, we really needed to do about $20 increase if we did nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But we went on and we passed the 630 increase and we've done the meters, and like Mr. Johnson, I think that we need to wait until we have looked at all those things that we have put in place to see how those are working. I know we don't have a limited amount of reserve, but I guess my question might not be for you and might not be for anybody in this room. I think I asked this question last year. If we're losing customers, why are we still producing the same amount of water? I have no idea. I don't understand that at all. And just anybody a simple answer, I'd be a very long. I don't understand how we keep making a product and we don't have the supply and demand on things. Super. Yeah. So I don't understand that at all. And I'm not sure who could answer that question.
Without your operators here, can I take a stab at it?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
I'm not an operator though.
Okay.
With the water, what's happened there is your cost to produce a gallon of water, 1,000 gallons of water, consistently goes up over time. You produce, your sales have actually gone down, your competitive water. Water loss, unaccounted for water, and that's what we're talking about, the meters and things like that. That has gone up because the meters are running slower, leaks and things like that, and council, that was one of the things they directed Mike to work on his leaks, and I think he's got some plans in there towards fixing those leaks. But your costs have gone up for producing 1,000 gallons of water over time. And even though you're not selling as much, your costs still go up proportionally. The county rate, I think, was originally 110, and the law director called me and said, what's the bulk, what would be the cost of the water, and we came up with 246.
Right.
And that's just a factor of time. It costs more to produce 1,000 gallons of water. Have I answered your question?
Yes, you have, it's costing more to produce that same
Yeah.
product, I understand that. So my thing is, well, I do baking, so that means that if flour is costing more and all these things, then yes, I have to increase on how much I'm gonna charge for this cake. But at the same time, people who bake that, and they now say, you know what, we're not gonna be able to make this size of cake anymore. We just can't make it anymore. So I don't understand why we're still making that size cake. Even though we know that we cannot afford to make that size cake.
I'm not an operator, not an engineer. The problem is, you have a plant, and you have pipes, and you have tanks and pump stations that were all sized to fit that original population, the steel mill and things like that. And it makes no sense to go out and tear down that plant and put a smaller one in, because you'd have debt, you would have,
Okay,
it just doesn't make any sense.
okay,
Okay?
okay.
Good question now, good question.
Thank you.
I have nothing to add.
I have something to add to what Ann said, and I don't know if this is what, because this is what I thought she was asking. We're producing water that we don't know. We got 54%, or that's the last figure I heard, that we have no idea where it is. And that's what I don't understand. I don't understand that 54. If I'm right in that percentage, 54% of the water, we have no idea where it's going.
You're right, I mean, we're producing 50% more than we know where it's going, but our residents are using 50% less than the national average. So assuming there's no reason why we shouldn't be at the national average. If we get to the national average with these new meters, wouldn't that be a de facto 50% increase in the rate?
It would have a big impact, yes.
So if we do nothing, people are gonna pay more because the meters are gonna read right. And if the numbers are right, they're gonna pay 50% more. So to tack on an increase before those new meters get in, that's unrealistic in my opinion.
The other fact I will throw out, and I think you're at around 34 and some change per month, 3,400 and some odd gallons. Typically, in Ohio, when we're forecasting, and we work with unmetered utilities, so you've got to base your numbers on something. But when we go out there, communities such as this, we're using somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 gallons per month for an average residential size customer. Now, what's an average residential size customer? Am I one? No, I'm going to use 10,000 gallons. You may use 2,000 gallons per month. But on the average, you're probably looking around 5,000 gallons. Between 34 and 5,000 gallons is probably what you can expect to increase by putting the new meters. Somewhere in that range. 6,000 gallons, I think that takes in some states with a little bit different climate conditions and some of the states out west, the national figure. But in Ohio, I typically use 5,000, and that's not too far from where you're at, Mr. Johnson. So you can expect you should reasonably expect to see some increase when we put those meters in. Again, it's weighing out your reserves. You don't want to get those down too far because Murphy's Law out there says calamities will happen. Other questions? I got another meeting to go to.
Thank you.
Greg, I just want to thank Mr. Roush for his comments and work with the city. And we look forward to continuing those.
Very good, and Tim and Stacy or yourself, call me anytime that we can answer a question or help you.
Thank you, John.
Don, it was good to see you again.
Good seeing you too, John.
Council
Thank you,
folks.
sir. Thank you.
Good to
John,
see you.
come safe trip home.
Thank you.
Greg, if I could, just a couple of remarks and then ask Stacy to part two of this discussion. I can say that the administration will continue to monitor these trends. I think that no one wants to raise rates. No one wants to raise rates. And I think what the administration is pointing out is a troubling trend. And we can't ignore that trend. We certainly will continue to monitor it. I think, it's really why we've been so on top of it is Stacy's work in keeping track of that and bringing that to the forefront. So I know her remarks are going to be prefaced on preparations. Things don't turn around if we do have problems. Because of all the utility, or of all the departments in the city, utilities are the one that runs most like a business. We've got to cover our costs and pay the bills and provide a service. And so I know she'll be talking about that. I do agree. I think and as I've said in the past, and will continue to say, the impact of the meter program is huge, but we need to keep monitoring it and make certain that it is going to pick up and improve. I don't know of any reason, I agree, Mike, as to not to anticipate that will happen. But we have to look at the worst case scenario and continue to prepare in case for some reason it doesn't turn around. We didn't predict this, the extent, I think, of our customer base loss. So we need to take account of that as well. Lastly, two things. Our Economic Development Committee meeting is on the 29th. We're planning on addressing some of our economic development strategies, so I think we'll be able to expand a little bit more on customer-based issues and just try to attract more investment to the city. But there's one thing I would point out, and again, I'm not so much advocating it as suggesting that we keep it in mind, is we have not addressed inflation in the city with our utility rates. And each and every year the cost goes up. And so I know that we do need to look at how to address that cost and how that will continue to erode our revenues if we don't have a strong program in place to address that. So again, many communities do have an inflationary factor. We haven't addressed that in a number of years. It's something that's not going to go away. So, unfortunately, which is what I think inflation's actually ticking up a little bit. We were fortunate, I think, because we had a pretty stable 1%, maybe 1 to 2. I know Stacy had suggested 1.7%. I think the inflation rates that I've seen are a little bit over 2%. So I think we're just going to need to keep that in mind. So with that.
Tim, okay, just so we understand, I think tonight this is good information. Stacy's going to provide us some good information, but I know the committee, Angie and myself, are not really inclined to commit to doing any increases at this point, especially with what's going to happen in 3 weeks, get some more information.
And we are going to carve out the actual, I've asked Stacy to look at the, for right now, the large meter customers. Once we get those in, see what kind of increase we're getting. So we know specifically what kind of bang for the buck of our investment that we're going to get. And
feel that if we take the 3,000 gallon limit, you're only gonna penalize the senior citizens. They are on a fixed income now, and they all are set at the 2,000 gallon limit. Now we're gonna say, okay, you're still using 2,000 gallons, we wanna go 3,000 gallons. You're penalizing senior citizens. They're gonna be paying, they're gonna want to pay the brunt of it. I just don't feel that's right, and Greg just left, I'm sorry, I forgot he left. But I agree with Yon, the other people in here that said that, I'm sorry. Another thing, I don't think we realize is, when we have a water line break, our guys do it live, okay? You've never, how many times have you ever saw on Channel 9 News that we need a boil water? When we do a live, and Mrs. Morris is one that had paid for it, when we do a live fix, the water just runs. We don't turn the water off. So when you turn the water off, that just shuts off to the other customers. Well, our guys like to do those live. Well, the water keeps running and running and running and running. And then you probably have, by the time you're done, 40, 50,000 gallons of water just ran down the street or in someone's basement. I've had this happen to a couple people in my ward. And it happened twice to one gentleman on Rosemont. So the water just keeps running. Our guys like to do them live. That's why you see in other communities, they say, have a boil water, because they shut the water down in that subdivision, and then there's really no damage. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe our guys will be mad at me for bringing that up, but I think that maybe we should shut the line down. And
No water loss.
we're not gonna have a water loss. That's one thing I like. And then also we don't have the damage to people's basements. I know that that's been a problem. And another thing, it's only been 8 months since we raised these rates. It took me, I had to count on my hands. I should have figured out. Yeah, I've had a long day. But it's only been 8 months, and I think we can, give this a little bit of time. We're not even knowing the large meters, and I don't want to reiterate what everyone else has been saying, but I really think that I'm interested in what Stacy has on the smart bill. I want to hear about that. But I don't think we need to do anything just yet, this quickly. Like I said, it's only been 8 months. And with that, I'll take Greg's spot and turn it over to you, Stacy.
Okay. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all I pretty much want to do is just summarize where we're at. You guys have asked us to come with an analysis, so this is what I want to give you. If you refer to this page where I highlighted a red box, and when you talk about the minimum bill, these are just ideas. By no means is this, this is just ideas. That's it. It's definitely not even a real plan yet. These are just ways to gather more revenue. The first facts that I just want to go over are, I totally agree with, Mike's, perspective and understand it on the water revenue, on, the meters, and, I see a lot of, positives there. One of the big things that council has, we have yet to address as a city is the current situation is that there was $1.85 that was reallocated from wastewater to water. That reallocation has never been addressed. If you look at your sewer fund forecast, which is what I provide you in your monthly reports, you'll see that we are about $1 million deficit spending in that fund annually. So that's a concern right there. So that $1.85, that actually estimated to $1 million. So and our sewer, and Chuck could attest to this, that they're running with minimum manpower. I know Councilman DiLoretto just mentioned about fringe benefits, things like that. Those guys are operating on the absolute minimum. Chuck's got very limited staff. The wastewater people, they help the water when there's a water break. The water people, the water is helping the sewer. I mean, they're on the absolute minimum. Chuck's spending is very low as far as there's minimal excess spending. The biggest thing is that it's costing us $1 million annually that we don't have right now in this fund due to that reallocation of the rate, that $1.85 that was pushed. Yes, at the time there was a huge sewer surplus, but now if you switch to this graph that I provided you. It's pretty large. This is the $26.6 million worth of projects from the EPA. I don't like this any more than you do, but what we've done is I've taken a 5-year forecast and I've allocated out each year based on what the debt service would be to pay for these projects. With that being said, if I look at 2018 to encompass all $26.6 million in projects, we would need an extra $25 a month from each customer to pay for the debt service. I know that number is not pretty, it's not pretty at all, but this is happening all across Ohio. There are many cities with an EPA mandate fee. This would work similar to your water fund, water infrastructure fee that right now we charge, I believe, $3.90 to pay for infrastructure. But this would be just related to EPA projects. Like Mr. Roush from RCAP said, is that as we are forced to pay for these, we have to figure out how we're going to pay for them. If you look at past projects, the city's already spent $15 million related to past EPA projects. $15 million. Of that $15 million, to my knowledge, we haven't raised rates. So where we did have a surplus, we're continuing to spend through it to pay for these projects. We have paid for some in cash. We paid for what we can. At this point, we don't have the cash to pay for these projects. If you look at 2017, we're running a sewer deficit of $195,000. I know that's not a lot of money, but in 2018 it's $1 million, and then it's going to continue to be another $1 million because the rate isn't where we need it to be. The summary of this sheet is that the annual debt service is, after we pay for the EPA mandated projects, is around $2.2 million is what we need to cover. We could cover $1 million of that by not putting back the $1.85, because I believe the water fund needs that $1.85 that we up, but we need to address the sewer rate for that $1.85 that we essentially took from sewer and put in the water. So that would cover $1 million of it, and then my suggestion would be for the other $1 million, would be to divide that $1 million by the 8,000 customers and come up with an EPA mandate fee to cover the debt service. That would essentially be splitting in half what the true debt service would be on EPA projects. You know, Gary may be able to attest more of what the EPA is going to require us, but to my knowledge, these are pretty set in stone. I don't think there's a lot of wiggle room. Just to continue on, the wastewater fund is, well, we know what the scene is in wastewater, and then the water fund, this year, we have a deficit. The only reason on your reports it doesn't show a deficit in water is because we already transferred the money at the last quarter. So immediately, we're running a deficit this year, and like we already talked about, we're running a deficit in 2015. It is small, and I think we have time to wait in water, but I don't know that we have time to wait in sewer to cover these projects. If you go down the list, I sort of summarized the current situation, and then after that, this is where I documented what increase in the minimum bill would be. I agree, maybe that's not the best option. That is just an option. If we ran some numbers, this is showing that 50% of our customer base is on a minimum bill. A good assumption would be that because the Ohio EPA is saying that a real average is 3,000 or 4,000 gallons, that hopefully when we replace the meters, this will change anyway, and we won't have to change the minimum bill. Raising the rate by inflation. If I use 3%, what John had just recommended, we'd be around 180,000, maybe a little bit over. If we raise in 2016 the sewer rates by inflation, we generated an extra $130,000. That's not going to solve our deficit problem, but every little bit helps. Anyway, does anybody have any specific questions about the data? If you'd like to see any, actual graphs on usage, I did just want to address real quickly the collections. I know that's an issue. I know everybody's got concerns about the collections. I ran a collections report today, and our collections today, our delinquencies is under $160,000. And some of that's timing. Some people are on payment plans; they're going to pay by the end of the year. Things like that. But these are active collections. That is the true delinquency number.
All we have in delinquencies is
Yes.
$160,000,
$160,000.
even from all that past stuff and everything, or,
Well, past things over 7 years cannot be collected on.
okay, so for the last 6 years of
Yes.
$160,000.
Of active accounts. Yes, active money that our office can actively collect on. There's money that if you file bankruptcy, we have to write it off. We have no way of ever collecting that money. We have filed liens on every single landlord, every single person that the city's water policy allows us to collect the money from. Those were all filed the first week of September. People came in to pay them. However, they paid the county for that lien. Then eventually that money gets back to us.
So let me
We
make
won't
sure,
see that money until possibly January. That's what the county's told me.
let me make sure that I understand this. So $160,000 are the people that we can collect from.
Yes.
If someone filed bankruptcy, then if I filed bankruptcy, you would not be able to
No.
collect from.
No.
If I defaulted on my property or whatever I did, you would not be able to collect from it, right?
If you file bankruptcy,
Yeah.
yes.
So how much is that money?
I could come up with a number of write-offs, active annual write-offs. I could come up with that number. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Any questions for Stacy?
I apologize, Stacy. I know you gave us this number before, because Mr. Johnson asked for it, but whatever happened with the 90 cents going back, or half of it going back to the water, it wasn't good or something? I don't remember, and I'm sorry.
I can give you that report again, but my analysis of it was this isn't the time. I think that in a 5-year plan, that then we should look at flipping, if you wanted to do a flip or reallocating. But right now, with the water fund running a deficit today and next year, there's no way that it would be possible to take money from that rate and bring it back to sewer.
I think what we found was that if we flipped it here, we had a problem over here. If we brought it over here, we had a problem here. We didn't seem to be able to get ahead of the deficit.
Okay, thank you.
The only thing I would add on that, though, is most of the future expenses, the large ones, are in sewer. And the sooner we flip that money, the better. On the water, we're at a deficit, but we have the DLZ money as a cushion for a while. And it's not going to last forever. But that DLZ money is actually, in my mind, it's a rebate of past bills that the customers have paid, because they had to pay higher bills because our cost to build those plants ended up inflated for various reasons. So I thought when we had the discussion on flipping, we looked at half of it, 40 cents of it, half of it, all of it, and I think we were going to wait till 2015. Now, I would try to flip that sooner than later, and then we deal with the water. And you also got to remember that the meters are going to impact sewer, because sewer is based off of what your water consumption. So if that one study is right, that Steubenville, the average household in Steubenville uses 50% water than the rest of the country, you're going to have a de facto 50% rate increase on sewer and on water when these new meters come in.
I would also, I think, and it's not something that I think, Stacy, you're saying we need now with the EPA rate, but we've been successful in the short run in our discussions with EPA, and saying, we can't pay for something we can't afford, and we're not going to do a project in a year where we can't afford to do it. That having been said, we've delayed and postponed a large number of EPA projects, but we have not gotten rid of any of them. of that is, I think that the point Stacy makes about an EPA charge, I would appreciate council's reflection on that and any thoughts you have. It seems to me that you've got a nexus, you've got a connection there between what is being mandated and what you'll have to pay. And again, I think as long as we can postpone those, we should and reasonably do that. But at some point in time, we are going to have to be able to pay for this, is all I'm saying.
Stacy, is that what you're saying? We don't know yet, that $2 or $3 million from the past 7 years, we can't collect? There's no way of collecting part or any of it?
No.
It's water down the drain.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where that 2 or 3 million number is
That's what I
ever
said.
come from.
Right.
The
No one knows
active
until it does.
collections that I can tell you that our office is actively collecting on is $160,000 delinquencies as of today.
That's the story, right?
Our auditors, you'll see, they're gonna come in actually, I think on the 21st maybe, they're gonna be talking about that. You know, there was a public inquiry related to that collections amount. They dedicated an extra month of work just focusing on that, and they came up with a very, very much smaller number than that.
I just want to finalize accurate and just,
So,
let's get on.
Yeah, and I think
Exactly.
we
Just don't have to
anticipate
begin.
that. Absolutely, and we anticipate that with the performance audit, that will be finally, and the number is 2,000,003, 1.6, whatever it is. I think we need a final definitive finding on what that is and put that to bed if we can.
I got two questions. My first question is the hospital. John Ross said that their rate is down, or their collection is down.
their usage,
Their usage.
Trinity East, I believe, was a little lower than last year's usage. That just might mean not all the beds are full, or, you know, maybe some doctors moved out of there. I'm not
Do they
positive
have-
on that situation.
Do they have a new meter?
They just purchased all their new meters.
Not in yet.
Not installed yet, no. They have purchased them. On the meter note, we are at 83% ordered as of today, so I think that's a very positive thing.
My second question is, we just borrowed $8 million, right, last, where is that money coming out of? The water fund, is that correct?
The debt service for the meters only is coming out of the water infrastructure fund.
That's the only thing that's coming out of there?
Yes,
The rest of it?
that's the only water fund item.
Okay, where's the rest of it coming out of?
There's the demolitions are coming out of the general fund, about $60,000 annually. And the EPA mandated sewer projects are coming out of the sewer fund.
And, well, I got a third question, I guess, and I don't know if it's for you or who, or maybe Mr. Rapello, but, you know, the EPA, doing with all these things, you gotta do all this stuff, but they never come in with any idea of how you're gonna pay for it. I don't understand how they can mandate you to pay the, well, I can understand how they can mandate you, but if we don't have the money, what happens to it? If they say, we're gonna pay this, you have to do this, and we don't have the money, then I guess what happens?
Bob, we've had that discussion. What's happened is I said we can't pay for those in the year that they wanted us to. So the negotiation continues. But those projects have been postponed
Ongoing.
because we can't pay for them.
Because it's EPA, they come up with all these things, and they're good things, I'm not saying these things are bad.
Right?
It's like,
Gary?
And the important point to realize that is in our favor is that we are paying so much for our sewer now, and when you put it into the EPA formula, we cannot afford it. You know, so that is in our favor, and that's why we've tasked our attorneys. They're continuing to negotiate, and they're telling them that we cannot afford this. And that's the one thing that we do have backing us, is the fact that our median
affordability index.
It's an affordability index, and we've blown by it. So,
It's not just me saying it
right,
to them, and it's.
we have
we
statistics
showed
to
the
show it
budget.
to them.
Stacy's shown a budget, but it's not even just that either. It's the affordability.
See, Bob, that's, if push comes to shove, and if at the end of the day, if the EPA tells us, well, we don't believe you, and we're gonna take you to court, you know, that is in our favor. A judge, who will be a judge here in Jefferson County, has to take that into consideration. And to me, that, you know, that's the last card that we hold there, that a local judge, seeing that we are over the EPA mandated averages, is not going to force us to do all of these projects. And the ones that it's my understanding, the ones that we're doing now are projects that we can afford and that will benefit us. But we're not, you know, right now, we're still negotiating with them. So, and they haven't taken us to court yet. So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
I just want to add, there are projects that our lawyers are saying, the projects that we just financed, these are the projects our lawyers are saying that we need to do for their negotiations. We need to do these to help their negotiations and to help us be able to push out other projects. That's why we've chosen to do these. It's not that we want to do any of them, but
These
this
projects
is like
that we're-
goodwill essentially for our lawyers for the negotiations.
Yeah, but the projects we're doing now is enabling us to get more flow going,
Yeah.
you know, going through our plant right now, or our system, which, you know, which will help us. 'Cause the big thing the EPA doesn't like is, you know, we're combined storm sewers, and when we have very bad rain events, they're tripping the weirs and going right into the river. And I think we have maybe anywhere between 14 and 20 of these events a year, and you're supposed to only have four or five per place. But then every other city along, you know, industrial city like us along the Ohio River, we're in the same boat as all.
That's why we took our downspouts out, going into
Right,
our sewer.
right, those are all the things we've been doing for the last 10 years, dye testing and going out into the Ray Barton and all those places and making
Because
people.
they were running the weirs, and we're getting
Right,
discharged.
exactly.
We have,
Exactly.
what happens to us over the weir.
Mr. Chairman, are we ready to move on to,
Well, I want to hear
Smart
about
bill.
the smart bill thing.
yeah, and this is definitely some good news. So, very pleased to have Stacy talk about it.
Okay, Smart Bill. Here's some positive news, saving the city money. Okay, so I'll just give you the rundown of what Smart Bill is. Smart Bill is essentially utilizing today's technology to provide bills a lot cheaper and faster and a lot more clear to the customer. No more really small, hard to read postcard. I'll just pass this around. This is a full page bill. You can see we have a giant red arrow here. This is the one similar to what I selected, and we tailored it to the city of Steubenville, and the colors and all that. These are just samples. A big red arrow, please pay here. I don't even know this amount due. Also on the back, I don't know if anybody knows, anybody who works in our utility office, but they can tell you that they get up to 200 phone calls a day. I mean, it's insane. People with the smallest questions. What this bill is going to do is have all the information you could ever want to know on here. I know not everybody's going to read it, but it does make your life a lot easier. Also, like the mayor, he can put community messages on here. One of the big advantages of Smart Bill is, say the mayor wanted to send out a newsletter. Well, if you send a newsletter out to every one of our customers, we're looking at almost a $5,000 price tag per piece of mail. I mean, if I send it to everybody, $5,000 per mail. Okay. So now, what he can do, now he can send his message in with our utility bill. So when the city mails a utility bill, now his message is another sheet of paper in the envelope. Annually, we send out an EPA water quality study. Now, this can go in here and save another $5,000. We got a big meter program coming up. There's another $5,000, $5,000. Each letter that we send, we're saving money because now we're combining it. Also, if you're a landlord, you'll get all of your bills in one envelope. If you have a tenant and they're delinquent, now they're gonna get a copy immediately. If they're gonna automatically get a copy of their bill because it's not costing us any more to send it to
Well,
them.
they can't say they don't know.
Exactly.
The landlord will get a bill for his tenant.
Good.
This is just leveraging efficiencies through technology. Now our vendor, they'll map our vendor files. The company is called SmartBill. They do this, Buckeye Water District, Village of Wellsville, tons of local villages, cities all around Ohio now. They actually can do this. I calculated it out. It costs us about 56 cents per piece of mail we send out. We can do it with SmartBill for 45 cents per piece of mail. I just guesstimated probably savings of $50,000 to $100,000 annually. It's pretty significant. They get bulk water, bulk paper rates, bulk postage, of course, but they even get a deeper bulk rate than we do at the government because they're sending even more mail than we are because they're lumping us in with all the customers that they have. Besides that, I'm here, pass that one around. That's about it. Tim, you want me to say my other good news? Does anybody have any questions about this? I guess the biggest concern from our utility.
When's that gonna start?
Well, I'm hoping to start it as soon as possible.
So the customers will see now instead of just the card and envelope from the city of Steubenville, and now we'll have their bill in it.
Yes.
All right.
Also, it's going to, you can look at the samples, but, there's another one. City of Alliance, there's a lot of cities taking advantage of it. As far as concerns from our utility billing employees, I think the biggest concern is, that they're concerned about, having to learn something new. What I've been trying to drive home to them is, this really isn't that much new. We're still going to prepare the billing file in-house. We're going to review it, make sure, everything looks right. And then all we do, click send. It gets our delinquencies out within 4 hours. Another reason that brought this up to me was that we have an $8,000 letter folder, and it's completely broke. From a finance perspective, nobody buys letter folders today, and I didn't want to buy it, so that's why I started looking into other things.
Good job.
Anyway.
I would just commend Stacy on bringing this to my attention. When I heard about it, I said, when can we get started? Because it's definitely technology efficiency. Here we are going to be saving money and providing a better product for our customers. I don't know what downside there will be to it, but we hope to get started very soon. Happy to answer any questions.
Stacy, since you took that from Wellsville, that's good. Do the same policy when you get new water customers, have the landlord there and the tenant, make them both sign.
I agree. I'm happy to work with you to adjust our water policy any way you guys see fit, that's for sure. It's tough to work
My
with.
experience.
And Stacy, talking about policy, I know we were kidding at first, the message area for a newsletter or some type
Yes.
of announcement and all. I think we need a policy set on that. Obviously, we would want it dealing directly with city business, so there's no political ads or
Yeah.
any other type of ads for any other functions, but strictly city and set some parameters with that.
I was looking at some of the sample bills. Some of those messages really just help to continue to build goodwill amongst your customers. This is what's going on in the city. There's a event up at the pool this weekend that, have a happy holiday. Sometimes it's small, sometimes it's big, Here's the city website. There's just things that not all of our customers are aware of. And you'll have the capability to do it. I just have one other great piece of news today. We got a $225,000 check today from the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. So,
For the safety fund.
for the safety fund.
All right.
So, anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Very good news.
Going to have Stacy run the meeting more often. Good news.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments for Stacy? All right, Mayor, it's
You guys have to see
7:27, so
samples?
at this time I'd like to turn the Utilities meeting? Give everybody a couple minutes before.
We have 3 minutes